All right, everyone, it's time for another And Now for Something Horrible. As a reminder, please like and subscribe. It helps me out quite a bit. So today I had an idea that I could turn into a series if there's interest in it, which is talking about entomological warfare. So countries around the world have engaged in biological warfare through the centuries, either accidentally or very intentionally. And part of biological warfare is the weaponization of insects. And they're not just the insects themselves, but also insects and the diseases they carry. There's quite a few of famous research projects on this subject, but there's not as many examples in kind of the modern world of countries actively doing this outside of research. So there's been plenty of examples of like the Americans and the Canadians and the Soviets doing tons of biological research that in warfare research that involved insects, but rarely has a country deployed any of these weapons for obvious reasons. But one kind of exception to that would be Japan. Japan during World War II did a lot of biological weapons research, and they did deploy the weapons. So the most famous of these research programs involved infamous Unit 731, which was a Japanese research group that operated out of China when Imperial Japan had invaded and conquered large portions of northern China. So this image here is of one of those facilities in Harbin, China, that were operated, one of the biological research facilities that were operated by Unit 731. Now, 731 is famous for a lot of things, and generally speaking, their entomological warfare is not one of them. The most famous things that are associated with this research group are their horrific human experimentations. Probably the most famous of these would be the frostbite research, in which they took living people, usually POWs, and would, put their arm into a freezer and document what was happening to the living person as their arm froze into a block of ice, and then thawed that arm out while the person was alive, and documented, the effects of frostbite and gangrene and how it was implemented, and basically tortured these people while they were alive with all of this medical research. But as far as what I'm interested in today, they did a lot of this research they did a lot of less public research on entomological warfare. So this is one of the facilities. This is the guy who led the group. This is Shiro Ishii, and he is the monster that invented a lot of this research. So one of the things that they did was biological weapons research, and a lot of that was the spread of pathogens. Particularly, they were interested in things like anthrax and typhus, amongst other things, in order to use this against the Soviets and the Chinese. Some of their most successful investigations and then weaponizations involved fleas and the spread of plague, Yersinia pestis bacteria. So what they did with this is that they bred enormous numbers of rats, millions of rats. They had silos full of rats. And they also had incubators full of millions of fleas. And they would produce, through each of these cycles, 70 pounds of fleas at a time over the course of a couple days, and then spread them with rats which were infected with plague. Now you had plague fleas, which they then bombed cities in China with. And they had, what they would do is that they would fill clay pots with rats and fleas, living fleas, and then fly over and drop these clay pots on the cities, and then you would have fleas scattered all over the city, and they would spread plague this way. One of the things that they would also do is not just drop these clay pots, but they would first bomb the city so that everything was destroyed, generating lots and lots of refugees, and then bomb the refugees with the clay pots full of plague fleas. And these plague fleas would then infect the refugees. The refugees would move to other cities trying to escape the war, and they would take the plague with them. This inevitably killed hundreds of thousands of people. Generally, these sorts of disease bombings have been associated anywhere between 400 and 500,000 deaths in China during and after World War II. One of the problems with this plague research, other than its ethical concerns, is eventually Japan started losing the war, and the Soviets invaded Manchuria from the north. When this happened, Unit 731, in an effort to escape, burned down their labs and fled the cities that they were in. Um, Unfortunately, especially with the rat silos, all this did was allow all these plague rats to escape. So at the end of World War II, you suddenly see an enormous spike in the number of plague victims in northern China because you had millions of rats and their plague fleas escape from these facilities that Unit 731 were burning down to escape the Soviets. One of the other famous entomological researches that they did was working with houseflies and with the weaponization of houseflies. So what this was that they would do the similar thing with the plague fleas, which was bomb the cities first and then spread the insects. But instead of sending plague fleas, they would send houseflies covered in cholera bacteria, Vibrio cholerae, and they would bomb the cities with these flies, which would then contaminate the food that the refugees were eating and that they were carrying with them to the next city. So the flies would land on the food or on the drinking water and contaminate it with cholera, and then you'd have a cholera epidemic amongst the refugees that they would spread from town to town as they traveled. And again, this killed another 100,000 people or so. So this was extremely effective entomological biological warfare. Other countries did similar research. The Canadians were particularly vicious in their entomological warfare research, and I can talk about that another time. But that's what I want to talk about today, and I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.